In today's 6th episode of the Sports and Psychology Podcast, we are looking at approaches toward training and getting better. With new season starting, we all have areas where we want to grow or want our team to grow, and it's important that we all improve in the important ways as quickly as possible to achieve results. So if you're a coach, player, or sports enthusiast, and you're excited about getting better, then you're right where you want to be. Hello, buenos dias, dobrý den, ohayo gozaimasu. Welcome to the Sports and Psychology Podcast, the weekly Saturday morning pod where we talk all things athletes, tactics, performance, and most importantly, mindset. I'm your host, letting them three balls fly, Cord Thomas. I'm a mindset coach specializing in sports psychology, performance, stress and anxiety reduction, and mental preparation, having helped hundreds of clients and tens of professional athletes exceed their potential, reach their goals, and lead fulfilling lives. After becoming a two-time Taekwondo Junior Olympic medalist and moving from the US to Europe to study and play basketball, I found my passion in the psychology of success. Before we hop into things, do me a favor, hit that follow button below the video or the pod to get updates on new videos, new episodes. And if you're here with me on YouTube, hit me with a like and a comment. Thank you for making the Sports and Psychology Pod your first Saturday morning listen. If you want to reach out and connect with me or join in our mailbag episode, you can find me on Instagram at athlete.m1ndsct, Twitter, athletem1ndsct, or email me at sportsandpsychologypod@gmail.com. Let's hop into things. First, in news and notes, I'd like to say congratulations to the Adelaide 36ers. They beat the Phoenix Suns in a preseason game, becoming the first non-European team to ever, in any competition, beat an NBA team. This proves the strength of the Australian NBL, and more than anything, the fact that all over the world there are so many amazing and great players, but there are only about 450 spots in the NBA, and it's not a great fit for everyone. NBL is a great place for up-and-coming players, is a great place for a lot of Asian players and a lot of Australian and also UK players. That league is somewhere where people who maybe don't want to go to Europe and play in a place where they don't speak English, where they can go and play in an English-speaking country. And this was not a preseason game where Chris Paul, where Mikal Bridges didn't play. The starters for the Suns played not a ton of minutes, but that wasn't expected in a preseason game. So the 36ers really did something fantastic here. Now, if this is something you're curious about, definitely go back to episode 3, where I dove into why European players choose to stay or come back to Europe to play their sport. I think it's a great episode. I think it's an interesting dive into exactly this topic, where North America isn't the best place for everyone. Also in the news, we have the NHL here in Prague for the Global Series, and they will be playing just after I record this podcast. I'm hoping for everyone's sake that it's a good couple of games without too much drama. There was an attempt from the Czech government not to allow the Russian players on the two teams who are going to play here in Prague to enter the country or receive visas. This has been resolved and the players will be at the game. I am slightly concerned, though, that these games will be overly politicized and a place for protesters of the war and Russians to show their distaste for the Kremlin's aggression. In any case, these are athletes doing their best to represent themselves, their sport, and their team, and whose personal opinions may greatly differ from that of the president leading their country. While I appreciate the attempt of the Czech government not to allow further visas to Russians, I think if they're playing in North America and if their team from North America is scheduled to play here as part of some sort of globalization attempt trying to spread the sport in a country where people really love hockey, why would we try and disrupt that? If anything, sport, hockey, things like that should be able to bring us closer together, because that's what sports do. Lastly here, I want to touch on what's been happening in US women's soccer. It's been great to see certain leaders step down, and after a thorough audit was done on certain coaches who GMs, owners knew were abusing players. That does not belong in sport. It is tough enough for us as individuals, as athletes, to deal with parents oftentimes who are overbearing. The last thing any coach should want or can want is to further traumatize their players. If you're a male working with female athletes, this is wrong. And unfortunately, men in position of power tend to misuse that power. And so we see yet again in professional sports, people being manipulated, misused, being assaulted, being put into working environments that are toxic, and owners or general managers that aren't willing to do what's needed to fix it. So I'm glad that, especially in a place like Portland, with the Thorns, the leadership, the owners have been willing to step down, have been willing to sell the team. And this is something culturally that just needs to continue. All right, it is time for our first break here. It was a short news and notes. And when we come back, we're going to deep dive into not only how to train, but how to get up to game speed. What is our approach to training? It is time to talk about gratitude. We all have people in our lives that support us, care for us, push us to be better versions of ourselves, or that comfort us in times when we need it. One of the most basic things we can do to give back to these people is not only to feel grateful, but to verbalize that gratitude. Whether we're someone comfortably going into year 11 of our career or we're only going into year 2, we should be grateful for the people closest to us who not only put up with our insecurities and where we lack, but also love us for it. So take the effort to tell someone today that you're grateful for all that they do for you and that you appreciate them. It'll bring you a feeling of being understood, even though it might be pushing you out of your comfort zone. And it will make your relationship that much sweeter. So tell someone you're grateful for them today. We are back. And here in the second segment is where we jump right into our topic of the week, which is our approach to training, and mainly game speed. I'm going to break this down into 3 sections. First, we'll talk about the approach to learning a new skill quickly. Then we're going to take a look at how to improve what we already know and are already good at. Then, in the third segment, we're going to talk about coaching and how to get the best out of our players in practice and step-by-step how to create game-like situations. Learning a new skill. The first thing we want to do is get the basics down right. We want to learn the technique right, get the foundations, and never stop practicing them. With anything we know how to do good, we need to continuously, never stopping practice the basics. The basics are what give us the basis to doing the tough things well. If you look at what NBA players go through, the drills they go through, it's pretty much the same thing that little league kids go through, just faster. So let's learn the technique right. That we will never lose. And so, question now, how do we do that? How do we get to learning that technique right? First key, we're going to start slow. We're going to do things at 10% speed, at 5% speed, painstakingly slow to make sure that we really do things right. And then we're going to slowly speed it up and make sure that we can do it every time, for example, 10 times in a row perfectly at that slow speed before we increase another 10% and get a little faster and push a little harder. Right now, I'm wholly talking about work alone. Starting slow, doing the work alone, getting up to 100%, and ideally in that work alone, we're going to push up to maybe 120%, where we're able to really go not only game speed, but faster on that skill before we start hopping into competition. Now, in competition, we're going to want to go one-on-one, practice this on someone individually before we hop into that team environment and we're practicing it. So now we're taking it from individual work by myself on the court, on the ice, on the field to one-on-one. Can someone defend me while I do this skill? Maybe at 50%, maybe at 60%. We're going to turn it down, ramp it down a little bit to get a feel for what it's like against real people. And we're going to slowly ramp it up. And then we can add people around. We can add 2, we can add 3, and then we can finally try it when we have a full complement of team and of defense. That's how we're going to build a new skill, and that's how we're going to get to using it, at least in practices. Next, we're going to talk about building a routine. Once we get it up to a level where at least we're practicing this skill in practices with a full team, then we can start building that routine where every single day, ideally, we're doing a certain amount of reps of this individual skill so that we don't lose it. You know yourself that if you, say, for example, learn a language, or if you know how to dribble or shoot or what have you with your off hand or off leg, it only stays there as long as you practice it. As soon as you stop, when you come back in 3 months, in 6 months and try to use that skill or try and do that thing, it's not going to be there to the same level. So if we can build a routine, then every day we're building a little bit on those basics where we're training that skill, we're keeping it up at the level that we want it to be. Upkeep is important. And that's why I talked about the basics in the beginning. We want to get that foundation and we want to keep practicing it. When practicing skills, especially new skills, we want to go game speed. Once we figure out how to do that, then we're going to add the competition, and game speed is extremely important. Why? It usually doesn't make a lot of sense unless we're warming up to do anything less than game speed. It's not real. It is a waste of time and movement. If we're practicing things at 80%, at 70%, that's great for foundations. That's great for skills. But then we need to ramp it up, because what good for me is doing something at 80%. Once I get into a real game, once I get into competition, it's going to speed me up. Not only is it going to speed me up, usually like when we talk about game speed, we're talking 110%, because there's pressure, because there's fans, because there's competition. 110%. If I'm practicing at 80, I'm still 30% off, and the things I'm practicing aren't what I'm going to actually use, and at the speed I'm going to actually use it. So if we can in practice really pump ourselves up, if we can in individual work really pump ourselves up to going even faster than that 110%, then we can go and in the game maybe move a little bit slower and still be confident in what we're doing, still be faster than everyone else. So get up to game speed first without the competition. Then get up to game speed first in training. And then when you go into a real game, then you'll be at the speed you want to be at. So, what do we need to do to learn a new skill? First, we're going to get the foundations, the technique, the physical skill needed, and we don't stop practicing it. We're going to start super slow and get it right, and continue to get it right 100% as we speed up. And if we're not at 100% technically as we speed up, then we slow back down. We only add competition once we can do it by ourselves at 120% faster than game speed. Once we do put in competition, we're going to slow back down, and we're going to start 1-on-1, then maybe 2-on-2, and then we can add the full team around us. Be that 11, be that 5, be that 3. Doesn't matter what sport we're talking about. The principles are the same. Then we're going to take whatever that skill is, and we're going to build a full routine around it so that we practice whatever that skill is, ideally every day. And then we're going to bring it up to game speed with competition. I'm maybe not someone at a point where I want to learn new skills, but I know what I'm good at and I want to get better. So now we're talking about improving on our skills, improving on what we do already well. Improving on things that usually for us we can use, but maybe don't have the amount of creativity that we would like, or start to be repetitive and people start knowing what's coming from us. Or maybe we're good at it in certain situations, but not all situations. We only have a limited space where we can use those skills. First of all, I'm going back to the foundations. We're going to build that routine. We want to be practicing whatever that skill that we're already good at every day. If you don't have a routine around a given skill, build it, because without those foundations, it doesn't make sense to really expand on it. Then we're going to really ask where the improvements can come and focus on those areas. Analyze, look at where are the gaps where I can improve. That might be physically, that might be strength, that might be speed, that might be mentally, understanding where the defense is and what I can do to get better, to break it. It might be in variations. Whatever it is, we need to analyze where those spaces, where those gaps to improve are. And we all know as athletes, there's always space to improve. We're never at 100%. Even the greatest, most physical athletes in the world can get stronger, can get faster, can have tighter skills, can do things better. So we're going to analyze where we can get better and focus on those areas. Then we're going back to 50% speed, 40% speed, and we're going to train without competition, and we're going to separate individual pieces of the skill we're working on and get it up to game speed, get it up to the strength that we want, get it up to the level that we want it before putting things back together, and again, starting at a slow speed and building up to game speed. So what I'm saying is, we do something game speed now, we see where there's gaps, we take it apart, we focus on that individual thing, get it up to the level we'd like to get it up to, then we put it back together, starting slow and building it as we would a brand new skill. Next, we should take a look at creating manipulations or variations. Maybe it's finishing with the offhand or off leg. Maybe it's adding another crossover or move into what we're doing. Maybe it's adding a stutter step. Maybe it's adding an extra pause. Maybe it's adding an extra step where people aren't expecting it. Maybe it's finishing on the other side of the hoop or goal than what is expected of us. Whatever it is, creating those manipulations or variations into moves that we're already great at and can start or finish the same is going to be huge in expanding our repertoire. If I can take something I know I can do really well and turn it from one move into 20 moves, I've just greatly expanded on what I can do. If I have to learn from the beginning, from the ground up, 20 new moves, that's going to take me forever. So if we're looking to expand our repertoire, taking something we're already good at and creating manipulations or variations to it is huge. Then we're going to test and expand in practice and competitions that don't matter. We want to use training time, practice time, not to impress the coach, but to expand on skills that we have. Is a coach really going to be impressed in practice? Probably not by anything more than our effort. So let's put in the effort, but let's take those training sessions, that practice time, and focus on skills that maybe we're not ready to implement in games and use those, practice those, because that's the time for it. So what can we do to improve on things that we're already great at? First, we're going to build that routine. We're going to get it in the foundations, the basics, every single day. Then we're going to analyze where the improvements can come and focus on that. Then we're going to break apart the activity, break apart the skill, and train the individual areas that need it. Maybe that means getting into the gym more, training explosiveness, training movement, training maybe even catching or dribbling the ball. Then we're going to take what we know how to do well, and we're going to create manipulations or variations. Learn how to finish on the opposite hand, opposite foot, opposite side of the court, the basket, the goal, what have you. Try and create variations. Start in a little bit different way. Look at the midsection. How can I use a different skill in the middle to create a variation on what I'm already good at? Whatever the manipulation or variation is, add an extra pause. That is going to give us multiples of an individual skill that we don't have to spend hours and hours and hours training. Then we're going to test and expand on what we can do in practice and competitions that don't matter. We're going to take the time to try things that we don't know how to do completely well and use the time available for that, which is practice, which are competitions that don't matter. We are not here to perform at 100% and only do what we know in practices. Practice is the time to test. We are going to take another short break, and when we come back, we're going to cover great approaches from coaches, hoping to get new skills learned as fast as possible. Stick with me. It's time for me to talk about my services. One of my favorite topics with clients is career pathing, visioning, planning, and building motivation and drive towards success. I have quite a few clients that come and either are not sure what they will do after their sport, how to reach their goals to play in one of the top leagues in the world, or I also have plenty of non-athlete clients who are stuck or unhappy career-wise in life and looking for help on finding something that would be fulfilling. I love building personality profiles with clients, helping them to get to know themselves and a vision of their future selves together, and finding what it is that lights a fire behind someone's eyes. I've helped hundreds of clients creatively come up with a plan that makes them excited to wake up in the morning and work towards their goals. If this sounds like something you need, then reach out now. Send a few sentences on what you're struggling with, and I'll tell you directly whether or not we would be a good match. And if not, I'll do my best to recommend someone who would. I work with athletes 15 years of age and older and all other clients from 17 plus, and each session is only $60 at the moment. I work on individual needs and all of my sessions are completely personalized to your needs, whether that's online or in person. So take a look at booking a session directly at coachingpraha.com/bookonline. Or reach out to me on Instagram at athlete.m1ndset, Twitter, athlete_m1ndset, or email me at sportsandpsychologypod@gmail.com. Welcome back to the Sports and Psychology Podcast. In the second segment, we covered how to approach training from the individual perspective, both new skills and things we want to get better at. Now, in the third segment, we're going to dive into how coaches can facilitate positive training with their team, getting their athletes to learn and gather new skills as fast as possible. As a coach, I want to bring in routines and repetitions of the foundations. I know it's a lot of times boring for the athletes to repeat the foundation, so I want to bring in those routines. Whether those be warm-ups, whether those be end of practice training or end of practice skills that are being done, I want to give some sort of those routines for some of the foundations that I know we need to work on or that I know are important for our sport. For foundational skills, for the things that I know that we go game speed all the time. We might warm up at 80%, maybe start at 50, get up to 80, but then the rest of the practice we go game speed. There is no half speed garbage for things we know how to do. If we know how to do it, if we've done it 100 times and we've done it well and we've done it at game speed, then we go game speed every single practice, every single game. Why? Because if I can go game speed on certain drills, then I can nitpick. Then I can see where there are areas to improve. Then I can see where guys are unfocused. But if I'm only dealing with unfocused or the fact that people are going 80%, I can't get to how to actually improve. I need to see 100% in practices so that I can help my athletes grow. Also, if the athletes aren't going 100%, they're not seeing where their limits are. They're not seeing where they themselves can grow. When it comes to coaching, oftentimes we want to accept effort over mistakes. If you're going 150% and really trying hard and making mistakes, fantastic. If you're going 80% and are scared to make mistakes, that's someone I would pull and take aside and say, I need you to go harder. I want you to go harder. I want you to make mistakes. I don't want someone who's perfect because someone who's perfect isn't putting in the effort that is needed. So if I want someone to build, if I want someone to grow as an athlete in skills, they need to make mistakes because without mistakes, we don't grow. In connection with this, we want to build an environment of growth. We want to build a team culture where growth is number one, where trying new things is acceptable, where not only doing what we're fantastic at, but doing stuff we're good at is okay if we're trying to grow, both for our veterans and for our new players. I want people to take what they're good at and build on it. I want people to take what they're not good at and build on it and try things. If people are trying things, if people are growing, and if they're doing it at 100%, I've won at it, coach. So in driving towards building this environment, we need to be accepting, we need to be supporting, and we need to be asking for game speed. We need to be asking for the effort to be put in, and we need to be asking for people to make mistakes and be open and honest that that is okay. So to go back over what we've talked about for the coaches, we want to build skills and repeat the foundations, get into a routine, give players the opportunities to repeat things that they've done 1 million times and give them that 1,000,001 time to do it and do it well, because that foundational skill is what's going to make them great. We want to always go game speed, no half speed garbage. We want to accept effort over mistakes, and we want to build an environment of growth. Other than that, I think something that is important to also mention here is communication. Let's go in and talk to our athletes about where we see that they should grow, what kind of skills they could grow in, where they have opportunities to make what they're already good at better, where they have opportunity to make variations. And let's oftentimes maybe, have one-on-one conversations about this. A lot of coaches want to coach in big groups because that's the time they have. Whereas if we can pull someone aside and have that one-on-one conversation, oftentimes that's going to be a whole lot more meaningful to the athlete, and they're going to take it to heart 1,000 times more than if they're being told in a group what they can do differently and being called out in front of the group, which oftentimes feels like something negative than something positive. Whereas if I can take that athlete aside and talk to them apart from the group in a private conversation, that is going to feel 100 times better. And I'm going to feel loved as an athlete from the coach, which is in the end what we want if we want our athletes to get better. I hope you've had a great time listening and thinking to me here about training at game speed and the approach to training. If you have other ideas, comments, or just completely disagree with me, make sure you send me an email at sportsandpsychologypod@gmail.com, and I will definitely respond. I think it's great to know that both as athletes and as coaches, we have the opportunity to make a difference in how fast we get better and to affect the direction. And there is a map towards building new skills. There is a map towards improving on what I'm already good at. There is a map towards getting the best out of my athletes. We don't have to recreate the wheel, and that is wonderful. We as people are the same, no matter if it's business or if it's music or if it's sports. We learn by starting slow, building upon it, getting up to 100% or as close as we can get to it, taking pieces out, improving upon them, and then creating variations on that skill. Thank you for listening or watching here on YouTube to the Sports and Psychology Podcast. Please tell your friends if you liked this podcast. I'm streaming every Saturday morning, everywhere you can find podcasts, as well as on YouTube. If you want to get your questions into a mailbag or give me your thoughts, give me a comment below on YouTube or reach out on Instagram at athlete.m1ndset, Twitter athlete mindset, or email at sportsandpsychologypod@gmail.com. Do me a favor and hit that like and subscribe button, and make sure to leave that 5-star review on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. And remember, the foundations are what make us great. So please don't forget your base. And let's make a routine out of it. And in the words of Portland Trailblazers rookie Jabari Walker, don't let today get the best of you. Get the best of today. Have a great weekend, everyone. Talk to you next week.